In the Enlightenment philosophy, there's a distinction between what's called ego. It's considered to be the false self, and the true self. The true self is pure joy, pure goodness, pure happiness. The true self has never been hurt, wounded, or traumatized at any point in history. It's never been victimized. It's not neurotic. It's not narcissistic. It doesn't experience self-hatred or self-loathing. It's inherently free. It's the expression of pure positivity. Pure positivity. Overwhelmingly pure positivity. It's not neurotic. Not psychotic. It's not schizophrenic. It's not screwed up. It's clear, simple, very much at home in itself. And if the self is in the body, very much at home, it's in itself in the body also. So the thing with the enlightenment approach, which is very different than the therapy approach, everything we discover that from the perspective of the true self, everything's okay. If everything's okay from the perspective of the true self, doesn't mean everything's okay from the ego's perspective. This is where it gets tricky. So people can wake up to the true self, feel very much at home in themselves, free, uncomplicated, mysteriously happy and content, unconflicted by the past, not obsessed with being wounded and traumatized. And say, wow, this is amazing. And then they start thinking about their ego again. Their ego comes back in and takes over the driver's seat. And all the problems seem to come back. So with the enlightenment paradigm, we have to decide which self do we want to be. Do we want to be the true self or the ego? If we want to be the ego, we're always going to have work to do. But I'm boldly declaring that the true self doesn't need any work because it's already free and happy. The tricky thing is people don't stay there. So I like to visualize the body, mind, personality like a vehicle. It's a vehicle for consciousness, we could say, right? We could say that the body, mind, and personality is like a vehicle for consciousness. So I always say, who's in the driver's seat of your car? If the true self is in the driver's seat, things are going to be pretty good. Uncomplicated, fundamentally integrated. If the ego's in the driver's seat, it's going to be endless problems. Because real traumas have happened. If real traumas have happened, they need to be dealt with. But the thing is that the true self, which is a deeper part of who you are, a deeper part of who I am, has never been hurt or wounded or traumatized. So if you awaken in a natural and profound way to the true self, the fundamental feeling of being traumatized is not there in the true self. So we have to learn how to rest in our true self naturally, effortlessly, spontaneously, authentically, with integrity, without denying the ego's complex circumstances. But the enlightenment path requires renunciation of the ego's story, not denial of it, not avoidance of it, but renunciation. I'm going to scratch that itch. I know I won't. I feel so much better. I'm going to scratch that itch. No, I won't. So even though a lot of people have heard of these distinctions before, not a lot of people, I think, actually understand them. This is my belief. So the true self has never been hurt, wounded, traumatized, or victimized, violated, betrayed, insulted, disrespected, ever. So it's always already okay. It's not in denial, there's no avoidance, no denial, it's just being honest. And this is the case of the true self. But to repeat what I said, just because the true self is okay, doesn't mean your ego's okay. The ego could still be traumatized, violated, angry, victimized, right? But what happens with the enlightenment approach, if you learn how to resist the temptation to scratch the wound, it starts to heal. Just only because you're leaving it alone, not because you're not doing anything about it. You have the heroic spiritual courage not to avoid it, not to deny it, and not to try to fix it. And the reason things change is because you start falling more and more in alignment with your own true self. The true self is already in good shape. This is a miraculous awakening. Enlightenment is a miraculous awakening to a part of you that's never been hurt, wounded, or traumatized, or victimized ever. So it doesn't need any work. It's already liberated. So people will have an enlightenment experience. They'll wake up and they'll realize, oh, I'm already free. And for a moment, for 30 seconds, then the mind will start wandering. They'll fall back into their ego without even knowing it. And they're back in the problems again. So this is why, for example, this meditation process and the enlightenment process is so important. Because it's a practice of paying attention to these different worlds, these different possibilities that always exist within us. So the question is, who's in the driver's seat? And I know what I'm saying is audacious. I'm saying because the ego and the authentic self, true self, live in different dimensions of reality and occupy the same dimensional space. So the therapeutic path requires us to remain in the ego's world space and work on it from within that world space, which we can do. It's a different path. But the enlightenment path is very specifically a very different path. It's about self-transcendence, which takes a lot of courage to leave it alone. Can you leave the problem alone? Because your ego's saying, you've got a really big problem, baby. You're a mess. You've got a really big problem. You better fix it up. Try to scare you. But the enlightenment path is, to be brutally honest, only for very strong people. It's not for everybody. They say it's for everybody. In theory, it's for everybody, but really, it's only for very few. Very strong people can do this. Only very strong people can stop to resist to temptation to scratch. Just going to scratch a little bit, and it opens up a whole wound. And it's not just a wound; it's a world space. It's a whole multi-dimensional. It's another dimension of reality. It suddenly opens up and becomes real. It's like, oh my God, it's real. So if you leave it alone and leave it alone and leave it alone, it starts to heal. Heal means it starts to become more bearable, not to scratch it. It's an absolute position. Because you see, the problem is, this is just my way of thinking, so just take it or leave it. But at a certain point, we have to make up our minds how much time we've got here. What are we going to do with this? What do we want to accomplish with the time we've got? At a certain point, we have to decide where is our allegiance to. Is our allegiance to the story of our ego, or allegiance to the story of the Buddha, the story of Ramana Maharshi, the story of the real greatness realizers? It's a completely different storyline. They don't go together. So what's so difficult about the enlightenment path is it requires us to let the personal story go, but really let it go. And most people aren't prepared to do that. It's just too big an ask, which is understandable. Most people won't do it. They may understand it theoretically, but they don't have the courage to do it. And also, there has to be a mysterious aspiration to let go of the story. That's why we were repeating at the beginning: having nothing, knowing nothing, and being no one is the call of emptiness. As you said, it's the call of emptiness, the call of non-duality, it's the call of nothingness. Most people don't experience that, but some people do. They feel this mysterious calling from within of emptiness, of zeroness. And it's a mysterious call of the true seeker to let go of everything for God. So at a certain point, we have to make up our mind what we want. At the time we've got, do we want to be, is it enlightenment or is it egoic integration, emotional integration? At a certain point, I did some work with Robert Masters. Have you heard of him? Robert Augustus Masters. He's considered to be one of the best spiritual psychologists in America. And I was going through a very hard time, so I flew out to see him for a week. I did like 5 hours of therapy with him every day. And he's a very smart guy. He's a very, very smart, very intense. And I was working with him and his wife. And at a certain point, I started to realize that we don't want the same thing. And they're very aware of the relationship between our emotional experience and repression and avoidance and denial and self-delusion and all that. But I realized that they wanted to process everything to make everything conscious, process everything to make everything conscious, to process everything to make everything conscious. And I realized I could never, that to me, that would be like a life of torture, having to process everything. I much prefer to let go of everything. Oh, it sounds like avoidance, Andrew. But I don't think it's true. So to just put this in a radical context, remember that I would say that the true seeker for liberation has to risk spiritual bypassing. That might happen inadvertently for all the reasons that you're aware of. But it might not. But it's a risk worth taking if enlightenment is to be gained. You follow? So I think that people need to do enough therapy to get to the point where they know themselves pretty well. Nobody knows themselves perfectly. Nobody sees all the shadow. Nobody's ever gotten that far. But we can get to the point where we can know ourselves pretty well, better than most people know ourselves. And at that point, you can begin to take responsibility for yourself. How much is enough? How much is enough is whatever it takes to get to that point. And it gets easier for me because as I get older and meet more people, I start to gain more confidence because I start seeing other people much more clearly than I used to. The other thing is that the ego is very attached to its own story. It's a lot to give up. And have you noticed in your work that these difficult periods people go through tend to keep repeating themselves? That's the problem. So it can seem often in a therapeutic context like we're going through something, we're going to get to the other side of it. We get to the other side of that, then after a certain period of time, the next thing comes. The next struggle comes up. So with the enlightenment Dharma, we want to get to the bottom of everything. It's the idea to get to the bottom of everything. At least we want to try to do that. In that context, we see the human condition as ourself. I am the human condition in all its glory, in all its positivity and negativity, and the whole mess. The potential for liberation and love, potential for evil and darkness, it's all in me. So you want to take on yourself as the human condition. The challenge of the human condition is me. It doesn't exist outside me. It all exists within me. So then you see all the challenges you're facing on a human level as the challenges that we're facing as a human species. So we start to see the challenge of life in a very big, noble context. That awakens self-compassion. Because then you start seeing how hard it is to be a conscious human being. If you're serious and you're sincere, you realize it's difficult. Just because it's difficult doesn't mean it can't be done. It can be done. You have to really want it. Most people are looking for happiness in other places. That's the thing. People think meditation will help them feel a little calmer. So what? What I'm saying is very radical. It's very absolute. It's not for everybody. I'm aware of that. It's because the renunciation of ignorance and stupidity and selfishness and narcissism, self-hatred, paranoia, desire for power and dominance, and all these other crazy things. It's hard to give it up. Making sense? That's why you're in trouble. Your therapeutic passion is in trouble then. Because everything I'm saying is making sense to you. You can see both sides. I mean, you're smart. So you should wrestle with this paradox and see what you come up with. You should also try to experiment with yourself. When you start to face big emotional challenges, you can feel the intensity building up. See if you can get through it without having to try anything except relying on your own awareness. Which means not making a problem out of it. Not making a problem out of it. And we always have the opportunity to not make a problem out of it. Then when it passes, I got through that one. Nothing happened. I'm still alive. I saved some money too. Are you wrestling with the paradox? Good. It's a big paradox.